Okay, so it's 10:02. So the Commissioners Court will meet in a workshop session September the 28th, 10 a.m. ARPA, Brazos County Administration Building, 200 South Texas Avenue, Suite 106. First item is called to order, and the second is consider and discuss matters pertaining to funding received through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Topics of discussion may include current funding requests, current projects, budgeted status projects, and next step in moving forward for selected projects. So, Ed, you want to lead it off?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ed Bull. I'm the Chief of Staff for Judge Peters, and I've also been working closely with Kimberly Roach and our consultant's trailer. I've asked that I present quickly first kind of a quick summary, but what kind of where we're at. I'm going to give some new handouts and explain what they are in just a minute.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what I've handed you is basically a spreadsheet that was worked up and originally by Trailer. And I should introduce, we have Mark Taylor and Wesley Trailer here from Trailer today, our consultants. This spreadsheet actually has two columns, one from our first budget workshop for the ARPA funds from May 26, 2022. And then as of, I think, 28, as of today, based upon the work that we've been doing. And so this is kind of a tentative list or breakdown as far as where I think we're at. And it's because basically what we've done is the direction that we got from the court was the list from May 26, 2022. Since that time, staff, including myself, Kimberly Roach, the auditor's office, purchasing, we've sat down with Trailer, vetting these projects. We've talked to the county engineer, finding out whether or not these are feasible, whether or not there's an issue of legality, what are the implications if we proceed forward, what are some other funding sources. And so that's what I'm going to go through this morning as far as that 9/28/2022 list. I'm going to go through the current projects, and there have been some changes as to the numbers. I'll explain why. And of course, nothing's set in stone. The court can always modify, add, bring back projects, but this is based upon the recommendation that we've come up with based upon the information we've received. So the medical examiner's office is still in top priority or top on the list. Originally, it was funded at $22,500,000. That has been increased by $2.5 million, and it's basically based upon a best guesstimate. We are continuing to work diligently forward to come to an agreement for a location of that. The two proposed sites we are vetting have indicated that there would be quite a bit of civil work. We've only added the $2.5 million, which may be on the high side, but was in an effort to make sure that the costs were covered for that additional civil work. And that was the discussion I've had with Fred Payne. Fred didn't put an exact number to it, but again, based upon the best information that we have at this point, we felt $2.5 million was
Whose estimate are we working on, yours?
Well, when I talk, again, it's a guesstimate. And when it's the $2.5 million was based upon what increases that we felt, meaning staff in general, not just mine, based upon the additional civil work that would need to be done, as well as the potential alterations to the design of the building itself.
So we've got two engineers on staff. You had both of them look at it, and they came back to you with a recommendation of $2.5 million.
No, sir. Mental health services. At the time that we left the court on May 26th, all we had was a category. We didn't have a project. So until there's a project that we can actually vet and move forward on, I did, for the discussion of the court, take that off and zero it out. Previously, I believe we have been back to the report for the feasibility study for the sanctuary remodel, as well as the north wing and the BISD remodel, and changed those figures, which I think originally were $50,000 apiece. Based upon the information I received from purchasing, we increased the north wing remodel estimate to $100,000, as well as the sanctuary to $100,000, and BISD to $150,000. The community rec center, we are still, at this point, the location for that building is going to be donated to the county. We are waiting for a title opinion as to that property, that we can receive a title policy on that. The $1.5 million for the HVAC air purification system for the jail, juvenile detention center, and health department remains. We're still working forward on the elder care Are You OK? There is a Are You OK program that's out there, but we know that it's going to take law enforcement, a joint effort with law enforcement to do a program such as this, but we are still working forward. The feasibility study for the 361st Court remodel, again, my understanding from purchasing is that we actually have a design already. So that's money that doesn't need to be allocated. It's essentially, the design is there, it's ready to go. It's whether or not the court wants to proceed forward with a build-out. Wixon Creek SUD, this was for generators. The reason why this was originally taken off, and still is at this point, is that we're looking for another alternate source of funding. So it can easily be added. It was a $500,000 allocation, but after talking to the auditor, there is the potential for an additional grant. We do have a grant consultant and now a grant writer that is available to the county that we didn't have previously back in May. And so we took those off tentatively, but again, not permanently off, depending on what the outcome of that information is. IGN Stoutsland Straub, that was taken off because my understanding that was incorporated in the budget for 2023. And then broadband accessibility. Previously, we've been going around and around with broadband, trying to seek the most feasible solution. And what we've determined is that it's a little convoluted, especially when I've included maps for the court to take a look at. The problem we have is we can't provide competing federal funding, and we know that there's other federal programs that are out there. And we also know that the state broadband office is going to be allocating over $300 million to the counties of Texas for end of mile starting in October, as well as infrastructure money that will come in 2024. So at this point, I know that the recommendation is to go out for a consultant, which we've been looking into trying to do an ILA, which would be much faster than an RFQ. We may have hit a snag with that. The consultant that we were looking at may actually be tapped to be used by the broadband office of Texas, so it may create a conflict. The Brazos Valley Community Action Program's Meals on Wheels, that request came in for $500,000. Kimberly Roach and myself, we actually went over and looked at the current building. It's in need of repair, but it's also up for sale. It's listed for $330,000. The original idea that was posed to the court, which was $500,000, and that potentially would, for a new location, and I don't think we have received a bunch of additional information. The question becomes, is $500,000 enough for the COG to actually provide an additional location for Meals on Wheels? I know that was also theorized that potentially Unlimited Potential, which is also on this list for $2 million, a remodel that would occur could house Meals on Wheels. We've since learned that that location that Unlimited Potential was looking at it actually needs to be demolished rather than remodeled. So we're not, that's kind of been up in the air. We haven't received current information as far as the timeline for Unlimited Potential, whether or not that's still a viable option to house Meals on Wheels.
Can we go back just to broadband accessibility just for 1 second?
If it's specific questions, I can definitely get Trevor up if I can.
No, it's more of an idea of how the court set as one of our highest priorities, broadband accessibility for the county. That was all of us. That wasn't just me. And now, with one strike of the pen, we're gonna take $7.85 million out of this thing with no plan on how we're gonna move forward. So my question to you is, even if there's other state money and other grants available, what is our plan? Well, I mean, we've been working on this thing almost a year and a half now, Ed, and I don't believe we have any plan today in place knowing exactly where we're headed with this thing. And my question to you is, how can we cut one of the highest priorities of the court out and basically put nothing on that? I understand if we decide to cut some of it, but if we're cutting 100% of that out, that's not okay with me. We can spend the rest of this meeting talking about broadband accessibility as far as I'm concerned.
And Commissioner, I know that's a top priority for you. And
I think it is for everybody here. I spoke to Commissioner Berry about it, and she said it's a top priority for her.
I would concur that it's a top priority, the same as it was when we originally categorized these.
One stroke of the pen, Ed.
So what we had, you're aware that we had attempted to get a consultant to try to help us go through it.
Yes.
And that didn't work out, and then they've been working potentially with another consultant to get through there, and as Ed said, it looks like the state may contract with that particular person to do the statewide, and so maybe it may be a conflict, and they may not be able to. So it's not like nothing has happened.
Have you recommended that we go out with a request for proposals on this thing? At least it costs us very little to go out with a request for proposals and see what's available on the market.
I have not, because
Because we don't know what we want.
No, well, here's the issue. The court's already said it does not want to pick winners and losers. If the court wanted to do an RFP to go out and spend the money, we could do it, but there's gonna be winners and losers.
I'm talking about somebody to carry us through the process, a consultant. That is winners and losers. Somebody would be our consultant, but we're hiring a consultant to help us carry through the process, because we can't do this on our own.
And that's correct. And we did have somebody that, after we came in contact with them, somebody that would clearly could be impartial in the process. I only heard recently on Monday that was potentially not going to be an option. Right now, we don't know if it's an option or not, but they're going to.
And may I add, Commissioner Ford, in the discussion of the guests we brought in, it was made clear that there is so much more funding out there for broadband that we would not fund this project here, but we will seek other funding. And it is still a priority. It's just that we want to maximize the ARPA funds.
I understand, Commissioner.
We're not.
What I would add to what you're saying, this is gonna be one of the times that we actually agree on something, so that it's a special day. But my point to you is, this was never a project. This 7.85 was never a project. It was an amount of money that we thought would get us down the road with this thing.
And that's correct.
With our priority. But what I'm saying is, if we need to cut that 7.85, I'm perfectly fine with that, Commissioner. But I think we need to leave some money in there to move this ball down the road. I think it's very important to our county, to our citizens, particularly East County, but your precinct also has very poor broadband service. So my point is, why would we cut everything out with one stroke of the pen with no consideration whatsoever about we don't even know what we're doing yet. We don't even have a direction. So why don't we leave enough money in there to hire a consultant to get us down the road and to help us get this other grant money that's available? taking all of it out is a huge mistake in my opinion. I can't understand how staff would come up with that. I'd
So
I'd
let
like
me
an
ask,
explanation.
let me ask, I know we've talked before about, using this grant funds and then trying to do two different things with two different grant sources. And I don't know, I mean, this maybe it is good to leave some money in there for a consultant. We have been trying to get a consultant, and we hadn't been able to get one
That's
yet.
correct. That's
But so
correct.
if we left money in here in this ARPA funds, county ARPA funds, to hire a consultant, would it still be okay then to use whatever it costs for that consultant to go after the state ARPA money? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you may not know the answer either, Katie. I mean, I don't know.
Well, Trevor can address.
That's a brave man right
Sorry.
there.
So, I think let's backing up just a little bit. So, the biggest issue we have is even if we decided today we do want to spend this money, let's go. We literally cannot.
Right.
We are in a weird space where the ARPA funds require us to not spend money where people are already served at a specific speed, and we can't spend money where grant funds have already been awarded for specific areas. We don't have good maps to tell us where those areas are, but those are supposed to be coming from the state come January 1, and those will be available to us after that. And then we can look at it, see where those actual unserved areas are, and then come up with a plan for how we tackle those. So
That'll be 2 years, Trevor, that we still don't have a plan. What I'm saying is, I would like to advance this thing some way. In other words, I'd like to move forward. So our citizens could look at us as a commissioner's court and say, hey, they took action. They did something. I'm not saying that we need to spend $7.85 million tomorrow, but what I'm saying is, there's something that we can do.
So we'd have to talk to, again, Katie might be able to chime in, but we would be doing a disservice to ourselves to formulate a plan and get so far out ahead of our skis and then realize, oh wait, we actually can't do that, or we can't do this.
Let me make point one. Point one is, it makes a lot of sense that we go after some of this state funding for broadband.
Absolutely.
I think we could all agree on that.
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense. How would we do that? What's the process to do that? We've got to have a grant writer.
Absolutely.
We've got to have a plan.
Yep.
Okay, so if we take all this money out, as has been recommended, how do we accomplish that? In our spare time?
No, I mean, I think that's, Katie's brought a grant writer in to contract.
Yeah.
What plan?
That's the question.
There's nobody that can come up with a plan.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a plan. This is the Rush Forward plan. We go after state money.
With what funding?
We go after the grant money.
What if the state funding won't allow you to use a grant?
We've got our consultant right here that can tell us.
ARPA will,
But we
what if
don't-
whatever you're going for won't?
But we don't know
Requires a
that.
match.
But we don't know that. That's a what if.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
And I understand that there is a really fast-moving environment out there with regard to infrastructure funding, with regard to the state's broadband plan, now that they're finally getting things up to speed through the comptroller's office, which is a
Yes.
strange place.
And they're
but
using-
anyway,
I think they're
that's
using-
where it is. But we need somebody who's a qualified person, and I was really under the assumption that we were already in the process, instead of looking for people individually as a consultant, that we were gonna go out with an RFP and say, there's got to be, with this much money out there up for grabs, there's got to be people who are willing to step on board that are qualified in having done these types of things in the past and are looking at the current situation, that can give us guidance as to which way we should go. So I was really under the assumption after our last meeting, when we talked about, when the COG came over here and we talked about the BB-COGNet and all of those types of things, I think the conclusion I came up with is we were going to go out for an RFP or an RFQ, whichever we wanted, whichever works best, to find somebody that we could partner with to guide us not only through what's available with these ARPA funds for us, but also of the many opportunities that are going to be coming through the state, from the state broadband office and from the Infrastructure and Jobs Act as well. So that's where I thought
So-
we were.
I will tell you
where
the
I-
last-
Where I thought we
last I
were.
had-
So,
was
Katie,
we were
step-
gonna go
step
with
two.
an RFQ.
Well-
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
I can't hear
Oh, okay.
when you're talking across one another. I think
Okay,
that
so-
Katie's
Step
saying something.
2 would be that we have a dedicated person on staff with the county that would head this up and move us forward. I'm gonna suggest, I suppose that Trevor makes less than $150,000 a year. If that's the case, there needs to be $150,000 in here just to have him totally dedicated to the project. That would be step 2. I mean, we've done it
Okay,
with the
so,
judge's
hold on.
chief of staff heading the thing up to now.
And he's not getting paid from grant
And he-
funds.
Absolutely, and he can't give it his full attention.
And Trevor wouldn't be able to either.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
suggesting
so
that we get
both
somebody that could give
Step one
it
and
full
step two.
attention.
One is an RFQ or RFP, the other is a position.
Yes,
Can't do both,
okay.
right? We've
Well, I
already
don't know why
set the
we can't do
positions
both.
for 23. We've already set the number of positions.
Can we not use ARPA money for that? For a position to head up our broadband office?
To add a position, you have to declare an emergency.
Okay, look on East County, and we've got zero service out there. That's an emergency.
According
Based
to
on
the
today-
maps, we have 97% coverage.
I beg your pardon?
According to the maps, Brazos County has 97% coverage.
Well,
Well,
Maps I've
but
looked at.
that's at 25 by 3.
No, it's 100 by 10, according to the last map I saw.
Yeah, well.
I'm not saying
not
that's
the map.
ideal.
We've also had a lot of discussions, not only here, but legislative action conference, that the maps are totally erroneous
Yes.
in what they
And-
report.
Yes,
And we
and that's all
acknowledge
that we
that.
have.
We acknowledge that.
And so if new maps, I mean, the problem is you're gonna have, if you put somebody, my version, you can go ahead and reallocate some money to it. That's not an issue. As much as they're gonna be spinning their wheels, cause that's what we've been doing. Is going, what do? There's already, from what I understand, fiber running all the way out 21. So we can't, laying more fiber is not gonna work. We have RDOF money that's gonna cover all but, and when we figure out what those pockets are, maybe we can use that money for that. But we have RDOF money that's gonna cover a lot. We don't know what the up and down on that is gonna be.
And the time scale on that is variable.
And we are on a limit on ARPA funds, time frame. So if we hire a consultant, we're gonna need, the requirements. Somebody's gonna have to work, I don't know, maybe Charles, there's probably other examples of RFP or RFQ to come up with the qualifications that we would need for somebody. We've gotta hopefully make them impartial. We've gotta pay them enough to be impartial.
I
But
believe we
they're
already
probably
had a
gonna-
consultant set up that we made an offer to that we didn't get. So we could use that person as an 8x10 glossy of exactly their skill set of what we're looking for here.
I don't know that we have that in writing anywhere. Their skill set. Anything over 50,000, we have to bid. So that's actually the work. The people, that's a little different. Charles will have to help with that, but I would think if it was gonna be more, even for a consultant, we would wanna do an RFP, RFQ. And we can still do that. Nobody's saying we can't, as much as, I don't think it'll cost 7 million. But I do think that if we did it now, and maybe we would have time, I guess if we did an RFP or an RFQ in October and made a decision by December, and the maps come out in January, and if it turns out we have somebody else is already covering the whole county, what do we do then? Because I think we're getting real close to that with the RDOF money. There's not going to be, from what I saw in the maps, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot that doesn't have coverage. And so I am concerned about spending money on something with no result. And that the result has already been taken out of our hands, because you're not the only ones that felt that it was a priority. Obviously the feds did, and obviously the state does. I'm just saying, I don't know that we need to spin our wheels right now, trying to come up with a plan for something that, I mean, the private enterprises won't talk to the consultant either and tell them what they're planning on doing, the different ISPs. And so I hesitate, just me, I hesitate to continue to put money towards something that we're not quite sure if we're ever going to actually be able to improve anything. But if you have a number you would rather put in there, instead of 7 million.
I don't know how we decided to take 7.85 completely out, Katie. I don't think that anybody that can tell me what our plan
That's
is.
what
how
this
we're moving
workshop
forward.
is for.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
this is
Then
only the
I will
second
go on the
one. We
record
put
saying
the
I
7.
disagree with taking all of that money out of there.
Okay, how much do you want to put in there?
If you want just to kick a number out that
It's as good
how
as
much-
anybody
how
up
much would
here
it
can
cost
come
to
up
have
with.
you on staff for a whole year? To make that your priority.
You're already getting that.
I don't want you doing anything else. I want you to totally focus on this. If I'm going to give her a number,
You have to declare an emergency to create a
Yeah,
position.
that's, I don't think
Okay.
that's an emergency, and
that's my opinion only.
And I will, the other thing is, this is only the second time I think that we've talked about
But we-
money
don't we
with the
have-
entire group.
Okay, but don't we have some positions in the budget that we approved under the judge's office that could be filled, that are salaried positions?
Yes,
Okay, so we wouldn't have to declare an emergency in order
good
to
point.
do that,
Good point.
because those placeholder positions are there and available.
And if you, now the further, do we want the consultant to find other grants, or do we want the consultant to come up with a plan for spending ARPA money?
All of the above would be
Yes.
my preference.
Yes.
And-
We want the
and my
person that heads this
concern-
up to make those decisions for us.
My
in
concern would be
recognition.
grant, no, well, okay, I've tried with the grant writer that I hired, but without Commissioner's Court telling us what they exactly want to do, and I wouldn't have the grant writer write the RFQ or the RFP. Without y'all telling us exactly what you want to do, we can't come up with anything.
Commissioners.
You know I'm not creative.
Commissioners, may I also lift up the fact that taking something off this list does not mean it's not a priority. It simply means that we're going to explore and do some due diligence with regards to the project, narrow it down. We can take this any way you're comfortable with, but it doesn't have to be from ARPA funds.
I will tell you that the grant lab, I had them come in, but the information is so proprietary in some cases and also unclear that I didn't want him wasting his time on that. I want him to go look for some generator grants.
Mhm.
So we're gonna go
And-
talk
and
to
that
Wixon
is
next
a
week.
need.
But
Wixon
this
Creek.
always gets pushed back, Katie.
Is
My-
it being
my-
pushed back when the feds and state are addressing it?
What I'm gonna tell you is that we had a person, and Judge, I give him all the credit for finding that person, that had a course of action that he would have helped us determine what we need to do. Right now, we don't even have anybody that can tell us what we need to do. We need somebody to tell us where are we headed with this. So my point to you is, you asked, yeah, I think we need to leave $1.5 million in there specifically to set up an office for the county, a broadband office for the county that takes us in a direction.
I would need some
I wouldn't agree
further
with
direction
that.
from the rest of the
I
court
think
on that.
it's-
And we thought we were headed toward a second person to do the consulting that was, and here we find out, the first part of the week that maybe that will work. I don't know. But we have continued to try to find somebody to do the consulting that has enough knowledge that can tell us, what direction we need to go. I mean,
But Judge, respectfully, I thought when we got through with our last workshop on ARPA, that the decision was, and the recommendation to your chief of staff was that we pursue an RFP or RFQ, whichever was the most appropriate. And we haven't done that, so we don't know. I mean, there have been individual efforts that have been made by members of your staff, and I'm sure yourself as well, but there has not been what I thought we had really agreed on is to go out for an RFQ.
And at the time, we did
To
not.
guide us through not only ARPA money relative to broadband, but through the continuing for the Infrastructure Act and for the state broadband, which brings state money in as well.
And that was my recommendation.
Right.
And the issue had come up afterwards is that Trevor had been in contact with somebody that we could actually do an ILA with. And ILA was somebody that would be impartial, that was quite knowledgeable, still needed to be further vetted, but it would be a much quicker process if it
Okay.
worked. And we're still not sure that it won't, but we've got to make sure that it won't conflict with the state broadband office if they do an ILA with the state broadband office. But the potential, we're not talking about just one person, we're talking
Okay.
about a whole department that this ILA would give us access to in order to truly take a look at the county as a whole and be the most prudent with the funds that the court has. So
And
the
this
fact
is-
that I took
and-
the
and-
7.85 million off
Yeah.
was not just to discard broadband altogether, but
Okay.
was in order to foster the conversation of which direction that we're going.
Will the ILA cost us money?
Yes. I mean,
Okay, so
that's-
how much money do we need to leave in here for that?
And that we don't know. I mean, it's.
So why do we take all of
You
it
want me to
out?
give you my best guesstimate?
Yes.
$250,000 to $500,000.
Okay, so let's leave $1 million in there.
Annually, or how long would this
I
ILA
think
be
for
in
2 years, I
existence?
would put $500,000.
Okay, and nobody's vetted this entity that we're having this interlocal agreement with, other than y'all. So I've got some questions about that, and I'm not saying I don't trust you. What I'm saying is I'd like to know more details. The second part of it is do these people have experience prior to this in working with communities that have been developing broadband infrastructure that we can vet, and that the same way we would go through with an RFQ where we would check their references and those types of things?
I would not have put that on the courts for approval unless there was actually a presentation done to the court.
Well, and if the state
Okay,
is
so we're
looking
pending
at
a
them,
presentation.
if the state is looking at them to do an ILA, to do it for the state,
Okay.
I would
That's-
believe that's
Okay,
they're-
that's interesting information, but prior heretofore, Judge, no,
Well,
I was not
we
made
fa-
aware of that.
It hadn't gone far enough.
Okay.
When it's in the
Well,
discussion,
we're
you
talk-
have to find out whether it's even possible or not.
Okay, well, we're talking about which way to go here, and I think it's germane that we say, okay, last time we were all together as a meeting and talked about this, the directive we had and had given to your chief of staff was RFQ, RFP, whichever. Now we're finding out that it's a ILA, but I know that you've been involved in this, but I don't think any of the other four of us are aware of what this ILA is, who this entity is, whether or not it makes sense to have an interlocal agreement with them as opposed to what we'd agreed upon last time, was to go to a RFQ
Judge,
or RFP.
after the intergovernmental meeting, I spoke with Michael Parks about broadband, and he said there's a lot of dark fiber in the county, a lot of dark fiber, and that AT&T and Verizon and others were in a bidding war to get that dark fiber to lease it from the state. So I'd like to find out where that goes, because if they lease it and it's available, then we certainly would want to take advantage of that. But that's still in the negotiation stages, and I'm not privy, or was Michael privy to exactly how those negotiations were going, except that they were ongoing. So if the state is going to invest in broadband, and they're going to invest in broadband in Brazos County, then I don't think we need to use our ARPA funds to do it, if the state is going to do it. The question is when and if the state is going to do it, and that we don't know. I have no problem putting some money towards broadband, say $500,000 or $1 million as a placeholder, But that's all I really am willing to do at this point is a placeholder, because I don't want to use county money if the state or the feds are gonna pay for it.
Exactly, that's not being responsible.
So are you amenable to that kind of placeholder money?
I would say $1 million is the right amount as far as I'm concerned, but I would like to also give the chief of staff a directive, if the judge would do so, is to move this forward. Let's hire a consultant. However we do it, let's make our step one, hire a consultant.
Well, the problem is that you gotta find one, and that's what everybody's been working on, trying to find somebody who is impartial. You and I were working on the other, and he's no longer impartial. And I think he would have been good if we'd have been able to pull him in and
I'm not
used him
familiar.
as a consultant.
I'm
So-
not familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay, well, it's that one's out because he got hired by someone else. So now they're looking at a potential ILA. Well, I mean, you
Okay. I just think that these things should be considerations for all 5 of us and brought to all 5 of us for discussion and determination and making decisions. I appreciate that we've got your staff working on these things. I appreciate that you're working on these things, but I really think it's important that we have all 5 of us together on all of the information that's out there, instead of having a confrontational situation like I think we have here today, where everybody's not on the same page, and I really am looking forward to us all getting on the same page.
You mentioned that it's a confrontational situation, and I hope that's not with me, because the issue is that we're one county. We're trying to work together to solve this problem for broadband. Commissioner
Yeah, I didn't
Ford,
put
I
it-
didn't take it as being confrontational.
Okay.
I took it as being frustrated. I know you brought the issue of broadband to me months, if not a year ago. And at that time, I told you that I felt that we could probably do something early in the year. We have been working on this. We've been working on this as a team. There are limitations, but you're exactly right. We need to move forward with that consultant, with my recommendation. But if there is a faster way, and that was my hope, that we could do an ILA that could present to the court would be comfortable with that, and we would move this project forward. If that's not possible, then we'll get with Burchesing, who was just standing right here,
Yeah.
with Caitlin and Charles, and we'll do an RFQ, RFP to see what we need to do in order to get that done.
If we can be presented with this recommendation, if an ILA can be worked out, that's great, because obviously it would be much quicker than going through the process of putting out a proposal. We were 2 to 3 months, and when we met before, I thought the clock was already ticking on that one, but since it's not, and like I said, I have not been informed of where the status was from the time we adjourned our last ARPA meeting. So glad to get brought up to speed. Thank you.
I would appreciate it very much if this would have urgency on your part, because what I'm telling you is, if we started today, I think the best guess is it would be 2 years before we could have high-speed internet to the county. And if we we've waited 2 years, so then we're 2 years down the road. That's 4 years total. If we continue to wait, there's nothing happening here. So I'd like to have some urgency, if you will. Let's hire a consultant. Let's get this thing moving forward.
Well,
And we've got to have money to do that.
I don't want you to have the perception that we're not moving with all due diligence and urgency behind us.
What
The
about
problem
when
is
you cut all the money out of it?
You pointed out, the fact that the money was taken out was in order to foster I took it out in order to foster the communication. I don't know what the amount is
Okay.
appropriate to put in. That's for the court to decide.
Well,
To
we
give staff
we
direction.
have at least an opinion, and I'm in agreement with it, that we need to have some money in there.
Well,
Taking all the money out is a mistake.
We will continue to move with all due speed and urgency in trying to get a consultant.
Thank you.
And Judge, I think the direction that we're giving our counsel, your counsel, is that he's gonna put $1 million in.
Yeah, we'll
And
need
we
to
will
take it out of
take it out. if-
something.
And then there will be workshops. It has been the practice of this body to have workshops on different subjects, and we are all allowed to give our opinions, ask the questions, and be better informed. So I would think at some point that's where we'll be. Today, we're instructing the judge to have the staff put the $1 million in,
Thank you, Commissioner.
okay? But again,
I'm good on $1 million
it
placeholder.
is not a sign that it's not a priority if it's taken off of this list. That was never my understanding of our concerns and actions.
So, I mean, it's a spreadsheet. You
Mhm.
add over here, you take off on the other
Right.
side, so
Right.
we need to look down the list and see where we want to pull $1 million from.
Well,
Judge, I'll make a suggestion that we added $2.5 million to the ME office based on no estimate whatsoever. So I think it'd be very simple to take $1 million back out of that for this time until we determine what that amount should be.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, that's
It
fine.
certainly was an
I
estimate.
understand the sites are gonna require a lot of dirt work, so, and that's not cheap, but, I don't have a problem moving the, medical examiner's office down to 24. And putting $1
Okay, so
million
we
in
know
for
where it's coming
broadband.
from, we know where it's going.
yeah.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Well, okay, so I guess I need to, we kind of got, but first thing I wanted to say about this whole meeting was, Judge, thank you for pulling item agenda 8 and 9 off of the agenda for yesterday. So we could talk about these things
Well,
with the
and I wanted to
consultant.
talk about it yesterday. That's
Yeah.
what I put it on there for, so we could talk about it.
Right.
But if y'all weren't there, then I wanted to pull it off and have a discussion.
Thank you.
I wanted to start this by saying thank you for that. And I guess really the way that I look at this money, nothing's changed, is it's one-time money. It needs to be used on things that benefit the most citizens of Brazos County, things that have economic development benefit, particularly the medical examiner's office and roads falls there too, and things that are readiness for funding, because we do have a deadline. So those are the criterias that I've looked at on these things. And I think that the question that I have is I noticed that we've got a lot of, if I look at the agenda 8 and 9 items from yesterday, there were a whole lot of things in the approval list under agenda item 8 that are reflected on this list here. Is there any real change from what was on agenda item number 8 yesterday and what's on this list here?
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's what I assumed after looking over it. But then on agenda item 9, what I notice is there's a whole lot of infrastructure stuff there that is one-time expenditure, and this is kind of a windfall, so I would like to be able to use the windfall that we got from the federal government to do one-time projects that don't require a continuing maintenance and operations stream or minimize the maintenance and operations requirement on the things that we do with this money, since it is one-time money. But the Elmo Whedon Phase 2, Elmo Whedon Phase 2 without the bridge, those things, IG&N, there were 2 items actually, and IG&N here on was $400,000, but the IG&N from Straub, from Greens Prairie to Saddle Creek, that has been told to me by the engineer that that's now a $6 million project, estimated to be a $6 million project. So, okay.
More than that. It used to be 6.5 before regulation.
Okay.
And so we need to,
Thank you.
we need to basically get updated estimates for
Right.
any infrastructure project that you have
But we,
listed on here.
okay, but we have
those
all
are
the,
outdated.
we have all the design done on it.
Yes,
We're complete on design, we're complete on, right-of-way acquisition.
we are like very close, almost
Okay.
there. You can say we are probably
And-
within the next month, we should be done.
Okay, and so the amount that was originally in the list, if I remember looking back, was significantly more than 400,000.
That was, I
The
think,
400,000 was the part that we were looking at that would
The-
be the piece of moving the
Water
water
line.
line for Welborn SUDs,
Yes.
which we're required
Yeah.
to do on
So
this.
I think under the ARPA funds, you cannot, I mean, I don't know, probably the consultants might be, privy to that, but I think linear infrastructure is not really a project that you could justify under
Well,
ARPA, but water line or stormwater or something to that effect is
Right.
covered,
And I
so-
remember that list that we received from Fred Payne that said
Mhm.
these are projects that fall under the qualifications
Yeah.
for the Treasury, but 13.5 million is
Mhm.
what still falls under the Treasury's requirements. The rest of the $44 million falls into revenue loss, which removes those
Oh, the-
those restrictions,
I see.
with the exception of it cannot be put into a pension fund, it cannot be used to pay off debt, still has to be allocated to a project by the end of '24, and it has to be spent by the end of '26. But what we can do with that money, since it falls into the revenue loss category, would not preclude any type of road repair, drainage, any of those types of things. And I'm getting nods from our consultant, but so what I'm saying is you got a project, okay, that's the cost keeps going up and keeps going up. We have a project that's ready. It will benefit a whole bunch of people who are in very, very public safety. We've had a lot of talk about public safety in a lot of these meetings about the budget. This will affect public safety for a growing and growing and growing number of people that are buying homes and living off of IGNN in Greens Prairie. So it's a project that's ready. It's one that we can do. And I don't understand why we're pulling that from the list, because I did hear the statement made that it's in the 22-23 budget, but I was looking in, and I guess that falls into the $2,970,000 in roads, but that was coming out of the certificates of obligation. And I looked under capital in the budget that we've approved, and I don't see Stousland Straub in there, but maybe you can direct me to
No,
where I can see
so-
that.
Yeah, I mean, so anything that is under road and bridge, it's under the capital for road and bridge. So that's probably something you won't,
Well, but
see.
but under road and bridge, under 635600001, that's
Yeah.
road and bridge capital.
No,
No,
that's-
no.
In their departmental budget.
56.
Okay, but there's the Rock Prairie, but I mean, there's infrastructure projects in there, the Rock Prairie Rock Prairie West ILA.
That's
is
That
in
we're
there.
using debt for, yes.
Okay. Then heavy fleet, and then the new office building, that's under road and bridge capital. But under roads, out of the COs, I see $2,970,000.
It's in the regular department budget,
Okay,
under general fund.
okay.
We put $10,750,000 in because we try to only, if it's debt, we create its own fund.
Okay.
And
yeah.
for capital, purchasing does most of the bids for the capital fund. This
Okay.
is under road and bridge because they're responsible for.
Okay, I'm looking under general fund, there's $1,257,000 for road maintenance and construction.
That's maintenance.
Right,
Wait,
okay.
back. I'm sorry, not trying to. I'm sorry. This is our abbreviated, right, Nina?
Yeah, the reason I'm asking this question, is I had brought up a concern that there'd been money appropriated for this, and I was told that there never had been money appropriated for this project. But now I hear that the money's appropriated for it in the budget, but I can't find it anywhere in the budget.
It's in here.
Okay, it's under capital outlay of $16,496,000.
Yes.
Okay, where is the breakdown
We
of what
do
those
not
projects
provide
are?
that breakdown, because say, for some
Okay.
instance, there's
So
some
it-
major road that
okay.
goes under tomorrow, our priority list will change.
Yeah.
We're very
So,
cautious about publicizing
Yeah.
that list
Hmm.
because priorities do change.
Well, yeah, but we've also had people who have come and talked to us as a commissioner's court about their concerns for safety on that road.
yes, and I mean.
And that, I think, is the meeting where I was told that there'd never actually been money allocated to that. In an effort to be open, honest, and fair with people, why don't we get a proposal from you when we do capital next year? Because we're gonna have a lot of capital that we can take, and let's identify those projects and make sure that they're listed in the budget, so we don't have people who can come to the commissioner's court and say, well, you said you were gonna do it, well, you said you were gonna do it, well, you said you were gonna do it, and it never got done.
And Commissioner, keep in mind, we don't publicize that
Yeah.
because, and we haven't committed, that money is set aside. If an emergency
Okay.
occurs, which it does, you know, in precinct 4, we lost a whole,
Well, we've got 4.5,
road.
but
And we had to take money from that.
So it goes
Commissioner,
back
we've got
to-
$4.5 million in capital contingency in this budget that were approved, and then when the tax rate was chosen, there was $7 million added to that. So we're covered.
Well,
we
I
never-
wouldn't
I mean,
say
I
that
I guess it goes back to
necessarily.
the way the county road and bridge system is.
It's unit as
under
opposed
the,
to
yeah, and so the
precinct.
way
I
we
get
can
that.
operate is we can give you a priority list, but that doesn't mean that that's
Okay.
going to be the list that we ultimately, you know, we
Yeah.
try to
That-
stay as close as
Yeah,
possible
let me,
to
let me
it.
stop you there, because really, we're talking about ARPA funds right
Yeah,
now. We
and-
shouldn't be.
And I'm talking
we've
about
got off
IGN.
in the
and I'm
weeds.
I'm talking about IGN and Stouseland Road. That's an ARPA project that was
Well,
on
it's-
here, that's being struck.
But,
So, I mean, this is germane, and I
But
heard
not-
the statement made by your chief of staff that the money in there had been appropriated in the budget, in the 2022 to 2023 budget. Was that not correct, Mr. Bull?
That's what I was told, that it was gonna be taken care of in the 2023 budget.
Okay.
I don't know how that plays into the
Okay.
whole
Well-
budget process and that portion of it. I mean, I'm not trying to
No.
stop the conversation. My hope was, I know that we got hung up on this, maybe we could revisit it after I finish going through the list, and, because Lord knows, I didn't wanna stand up here for over an hour. I've got a
Well, I
bad
mean,
leg
and the other,
today.
yeah, well, the other thing that we've got coming too is assuming that the bond referendum passes, there's 20 million of that $100 million that will be for county roads, so we need to, I mean, this is germane to that.
and I agree with that, and
This
that's
is
my
germane to
hope,
that.
and so, but again, we're kind of getting off of in the weeds that we.
Well, I just
We
want to know.
haven't heard from
that-
our
okay,
consultants yet,
can-
we're
if
now
I-
into this
Yeah,
meeting.
well-
If I talk to anybody, well, let me just ask one question, and I won't talk anymore about this item that's been removed. If I were to be asked by a constituent in Precinct 1 if IGN, and Stouseland Road is going to be done, could I say yes or no, and could I say when?
The answer is it just depends, and that's
Yeah.
probably your answer, because, it depends
Yeah.
on budget, it depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's not a straightforward linear answer. If you gave me 30 million every year, your answer would be yes, for every year, a priority list that I provide, because you.
Well, I know
you
that-
do not
I know
get
that-
that kind of money,
okay.
so we are playing catch up.
But I know that we've been presented with $100 million of over the next 5-year needs from your
Yes.
department, and I asked for us to all be updated on that. But the reality of it is if somebody asks me about a road project, my precinct, Commissioner Ford's precinct, now next year Commissioner Berry's precinct, because there will be some county roads there, or Commissioner Ford, there's really no statement that we can give to them that says, yeah, we've funded it and here it is.
It's on the
and
list
then
and it
it'll be
will get done at some point. I don't know, I think that's what Prothon is trying to say, is that it is on your list of
It depends
when
when
it's
money
gonna happen,
becomes
but don't-
available.
I wouldn't be
Exactly.
committing to when, because that's one of those things that we don't know.
Well,
And
next year when it comes down to capital for the budget, I think we need to take a
You do know
different
if
approach.
you give us $6 and $10 million a year, we're asking for 30, then clearly things are gonna get bumped out of list. So that's why your answer is do not know,
Mhm.
you know? So it kind of goes back to the commissioner's court.
I understand. Well, back to the original item then, IGN Stouseland Road, Greens Prairie Trail to Saddle Creek. It was more than $400,000 that was requested as opposed to what's reflected here on this sheet that we've got. And it is not specifically being funded in the 2022-2023 budget as approved, correct?
I guess that's what you were informed of today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And my understanding, just one last thing, that 400,000, again, I don't know quite how that number initially was made up.
That was the
Added.
water,
I think it
that
to
was,
move
that was the water
lines.
part of it that we got in the first email that we got from Fred Payne
Gotcha.
about potential projects
But I
that
think that-
fell underneath the Treasury's guidelines.
So.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, our consultants are nodding their head.
While we have Prothon up here, I'd like her to go ahead and address
Thank you.
the Greenleaf request as well as Fawn Meadows.
So, first off, on Greenleaf, I guess, the first issue is that you have allocated, I guess, 600,000 here, but that number is out of date already, as we speak, because, right now, if we have a project of that similar scope and size, if you want to just equate them, and that project itself by just construction fees is $500,000 more than that. So you're already looking right off the bat, $500,000 over the 600,000. So 600,000 is not getting you to where you need to be.